We're starting right now.
Oh, the places your packets will go. Congratulations, today is your day. You're in packet, you're new, and you're off and away. You have data inside, you have things to say, but you leak who you are all over the place.
So for those who don't know, network packets are the way that your computers communicate with other things. And that carries across backbones. So whether that is at home, and maybe it's your internet service provider, your ISP, maybe that's from your phone, and that is your telco, who you're sending that to. Maybe it's the Mick fast food place that you're at on the Wi-Fi. Maybe that's your coffee shop. Maybe that's your hotel. Whatever those things might be, those things in between your device and what it's talking to see your packets. And depending on what you do or don't do with those packets, they can see more or less things from them. So my name is James Pope. Everybody calls me Pope because apparently that's just more unique. It's not as impactful at family reunions, but otherwise, everybody just calls me Pope. I don't care. You can call me James, whatever. I am the Technical Marketing Engineering Director at Corelight. That just means I have really smart people working for me, like Eldon here on this front row, Jason, a bunch of threat hunters who do a bunch of cool stuff. I am the SOC lead for the Black Hat NOC, and I help run some security conferences like SaintCon, BSides, and Cache. I got Mike Spicer here to come give you guys a keynote. I also helped kick off DC 435. We, once a month, meet here at this same place. It's free. It's by the community, for the community. Every first Thursday at 7 o'clock, it's on dc435.org. I have not updated next month, but I'm actually presenting next month on using MCPs to query SIM data. So if you want to do that, these are just various logos and things.
To be fair, you stole DC 435 from us in the South.
We got it first, so it's not stealing. We made a conscious decision. It's all ours.
I own the RRC channel.
Essentially, like splitting the codes weird.
Past stuff, I did threat hunting for multiple years. I did some pen testing. I was a VP of IT. I don't know, been in the IT space since 2000. So the Black Hat NOC, Mike spoke a bit about this, but this is the originating days before I started. I've been over a decade there now, and it's full of volunteers, NOC leads, and partners. And the partners are, we go choose a technology, a solution that helps us solve a problem. We bring them in, so they can't buy their way in. They can't, hey, I'd like to be part of your NOC. We choose them, and then they have to give us free tools, free things, and free people. So it's like great, right? For us, we get a giant room of 60, 70 people who are focused on finding the really bad things in the bad. You can absolutely have legit bad things happening, and they're totally cool at Black Hat because that's what they're paying money to learn. So we do a lot of evaluation on that to validate, you know, is this a legitimate bad thing, or is, as we call it, a Black Hat positive, a true positive, but it's okay at Black Hat. Attacking other people, not okay. Attacking backbone, not okay. Attacking registration, not okay. I'll get to more detail on that here in a second. So part of that, it turns into we have to try to find people. And in some situations, they've come compromised, and we want to let them know. In some situations, they have, let's just call it bad hygiene. They have something in their traffic that is telling data about them that they didn't know it was telling about them. And sometimes it could be severe or other. And then in other situations, it's, you know, they're legitimately doing bad things. And there's different escalations for all of those things. And in this example, every show, without fail, we see it's weirdly government agencies who have connections to LDAP over the internet, which is wild. It's different if you make a request to LDAP versus they actually are connecting. So that's cool. Anyway, so that's a situation where we'd call that probably a bad hygiene. You know, you could put that in a different bucket of something more severe, but that's where we would go find them, communicate with them, reach out. Sometimes we have to make a request to the registration and say, hey, who at this org is here? And then send them an email or go find them. It's easier when they're vendors, right? Like you go down to their booth and you're like, hey, can I get a hold of your IT person type of thing? But LDAP, government, wild. But if even without it binding, this is a great way to fingerprint what organization somebody works for. Because even if it's not actually connecting, we're seeing that they're trying to reach out to org dot something, right? We see that they most likely work there. It's unlikely that they created a LDAP bind on their machine unless they work there.
You're on your own, and you know what you know, but your headers will tell everyone where you go. You'll broadcast your company, plain as can be, your patch level, your habits, for all folks to see.
Yeah, so another way we fingerprint is DHCP and DNS. Probably the top two in the year 25 is going to be your SSL TLS, your SNIs, and your DNS records, right? And so in some of these situations, we're getting host names. I try to get, it was too hard to get a screenshot of 55,000 different iPhone and MacBook Pro names, and then I was like, well, how am I going to sanitize this? It's going to take forever. So I just made a chart of it. But this is an example. It'll be like Christopher's iPhone. And sometimes they'll be like iPhone and org, right? And MacBook Pro org. So something to think about. Sometimes your orgs don't give you a choice, right? They're dictated. Some of these Windows boxes are generic, whatever, and some are very explicit, like company or name dot company or acronym of company a lot of times. So those are useful sometimes. I left ands up there because like, and MBP is MacBook Pro. You'll see that a lot. Kerberos, like you really shouldn't be at Black Hat with Kerberos, but we do see it from time to time, and they're very explicit typically to the org they work at. I left a few pieces here, but yeah, education and corp, and you'll see their domain forests and a bunch of crap like that inside of there. So that's another interesting way to find out where they work for. And so in some of these situations, like I'm just trying to notify them of a problem, right? We have some captive portals and things, but it's, I need sometimes to get in contact with that organization, that person, to empower them with data to improve not only their own device posture, but the rest of their org, right? We might see 3 or 20 people from that org there, but for those, in some of these companies, there's 30,000 employees at that org who aren't at Black Hat. Maybe they're not all remote, maybe only 10% are or whatever, but they're going around the world, likely with the same configuration. And so in a lot of situations, I'm trying to get it escalated to their security or IT team and give them my email address, give them raw data. And the best thing that I enjoy is when you see this, you don't see those same things happening at the next show. Yeah. This is Black Hat Security Conference. Oh, sorry, he asked for the recording. What's the source of the data? We do point this out a lot. Illegal, still legal at Black Hat. We do have a luxury over like DEF CON, and that is when we tell people to knock it off, they typically do because they or their org in most situations have paid money for them to be there, and they probably don't want to go back and tell their boss, sorry, I got kicked out of Black Hat for trying to hack a space agency or payment processor or those are just random things off the top of my head, not real scenarios.
Totally
but
not
illegal, still illegal. So this is a situation where it's much easier. We find a thing, we walk into the classroom and we say, all right, we interrupt trainings, right? I need everybody's attention, depending on what it is, like, IP config all or whatever, right? Pull up your IP addresses and your MAC addresses. This is the IP address, this is your MAC. I know more information about you, but you yell that in front of the entire class. Illegal, still illegal, Black Hat, knock it off, and most time it will drop, right? One time there was a dude that you knew, I'm not naming names, but he just left because after we pinned it down to him, he left.
He was bored in the training. He could have taught the training, and so went to his own devices.
Yeah, that. But illegal, still illegal. Autodiscovers are great, right? Your emails, the emails, you're trying to connect to your org. So this is a pretty good indicator. Not by itself, but this is a high one. I have weights of this. This is one of the higher ones that you are likely work at that organization. But, you know, there's community email addresses. There's other situations where you could be part of something else, but this is a good weight to know that they work at said org because you're saying, I want to find out what the IP address is for my Exchange server or Microsoft or whatever it is, and it will point you to that direction, but the DNS request, Autodiscover, org name. Microsoft, another variant. There's like a bunch of these. There's decades of Microsoft of people were self-hosting, moved some parts to the cloud, moved some parts to Microsoft, but had their own hosting of Microsoft's, and now they're all 0636. Anyway, there's variations, and this is still all happening out there. So on Microsoft.com is also another one that is very telling to the organization they work for. My highest weight of all of them is your VPN, right? So when people are doing things right, they are tunneling their traffic through VPN typically, or they are validating that all their SSO is TLS and we're not seeing all that detail, but they're reaching out to their VPN so that connection is like, these are my variants of it that I see. I sanitize most is pretty good, I think. But there'll be ones that'll be like MS, DCS, and it'll be Azure VPN, and then in there will be like the organization name. And most of these are like something dot something. They will even give you like regions and a bunch of other information. But yeah, VPNs, portals, Citrix portals. There's a lot of orgs that have special VPNs for phones. And some have separate ones for iPhones versus Androids versus other. So you'll see like one org will have like 4, and sometimes even more. I've seen like numbers like VPN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm like, I don't know. They just didn't know how to do a load balancer or something, so they're just dropping them there. But this is a very good indicator to see where somebody is working at. The word remote is another good one. And then, yeah, regions. There's a lot of region-based stuff that exists. So that leads to things like, we rarely call out big company names. We like to send disclosures to them, like, hey, you guys should really like fix your product so that way people who show up to conferences, let alone security folks, but the whole rest of the world use your product, isn't leaking all this stuff out. BigFix, we've been saying it pretty much every show, so much so that it's on the I'm tired of this grandpa slide in the Black Hat NOC debrief. They, in a post body, in the clear, and I don't know for sure if this is every BigFix or if this is just somebody self-hosted, but it's every show and it's more than one org. It's enough where they should do something to ban steer their customers. So if you have BigFix by chance, highly recommend you go look at that traffic because it will tell you everything about it, about that host. And in some situations, it'll even tell you which patches are not applied and the severity of those patches. So again, like here we are at Black Hat and you're like, well, why are you looking at my stuff? You're invading my privacy type of thing. But if you're at hotel Wi-Fi, somebody could be doing that same thing on your VLAN or that hotel or somebody over wireless grabbing your packets, Mike Spicer, grabbing your packets, and they could be seeing these same things. And this is like a glorious targeted list. If that was somebody you were going after, like here's every CrowdStrike's running on that box, right? Okay, well, I guess that's good, right? It's better than not if you're going to be releasing that. But at the bottom of that is, here's all the patches that haven't yet to be applied and their severities. Like, well, I don't even need to run a vuln scan. I already know what I need to go launch against that host. So this is one we call it every time. BigFix, this is leaking your stuff out, a program that shouldn't be doing that or it's misconfigured. A new one that's made our list has been, I think we started saying this publicly like a year or two ago. Year and a half. Zscaler. So Z-Tunnel, Zscaler and actually met with one of their guys and had a conversation with him about it. And apparently this is their 1.0 product. And he's like, but on 2.0, it doesn't do that. And I was like, cool. As soon as your customers quit showing up to conferences using 1.0, then we'll quit saying it, right? Like we don't want to see it. In this situation, what this happens, and literally the first time and every time that it's so much now that we don't even go and talk to him anymore about it. But we used to go and sit down and have that same, find the person, go have a conversation about him, be like, hey, I don't know if you know, but like we see every website you go to. And they're like, no, you don't. I have a green checkbox in my corner, right? And security folks are interesting. They're usually typically there's a lot of senior folks, and they're very strong on their opinions. And that's not a bad thing, but when they're challenged, sometimes they get very defensive. Weirdly enough, I always have to like come at it with like a, hey, well, maybe you're right. Let's look, even though I'm like, I see every site you're going to, right? So what happens, you'll see this green checkbox for Zscaler in the bottom right corner, and proxying all of the URLs in the clear. So this is just actual sites this person was going to. And these are unique counts, by the way. So for this, in Black Hat, USA, 5,600 sites that you could go to. And some are like, this is an internal chat application at .org. And it's like, well, okay, cool. So, yeah. If you have Zscaler, go check, or move to version 2. But I argued with him. I said, maybe you should like have your PS guys help ban steer everybody who's doing this. And then we'll quit talking about it. Then that leads to overall the SNIs, like all the sites you go to. Is this as strong as an indicator? It's not as high as a VPN is, because you could have a org that sells a product, right? And a customer could be visiting that. Well, that doesn't necessarily say as much, but there's a lot of these vanity URLs. So they're the best way to put it. So in this case, this is their 2.0 product, right? ZPath is different. And these vanity orgs, so org dot whatever string, these are all companies that are connecting to them. So I can say that these companies use this product, but I can also say that it's unlikely that a non-employee is using Zscaler.path for that company's subdomain. So it's a much higher likelihood that they work for that organization. And you're going to see a ton of examples of this where there's a lot of applications that help me narrow really quick. I have 2 at the very end that are like my go-tos, but this is useful. It's interesting too, because a lot of times these orgs are like, they won't advertise that we won't tell people what our security stacks are. Even on LinkedIn, we take away that information, and then like you could go on hotel Wi-Fi and look, and you could see all the security, not all, you can see a lot of the security products. There are some that I went and dug through and looked and couldn't find results in because they used load balancers or other CDN type stuff that obfuscated endpoints.
Why aren't you encrypted? They ask with affright. But you're just a small packet, not sure what is right. You think that an AI should know what to do to answer the question and implement too. But wait, your packets are leaking. Oh, what can you do? You can hide them with tunnels. You can wrap them up tight. You can keep them from leaking and sleep well at night.
Yeah, so starting in Black Hat Asia, I started calling it the rise of the vibes, and also the rise of the self-hosting. We're seeing way more applications that have weird things in clear text, and chat applications where there's a lot of translation features that somebody put in, and that translation feature's going to Google or something else, and it's over HTTP. Well, that turns into you can view their entire conversation because it's being translated over HTTP. Right, all these weather apps. I don't know how many weather apps that we've seen that put out GPS exact locations of where they're at. And some of these are like, what is this thing? You go look and it's like 5 million downloads, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I never even heard of this. And who's getting 5 million of these? And so as you're just trusting AI and you're vibe coding, and I do a bunch of that, like let's go build a thing, if you're not really explicit, it just takes whatever path it's going to take. If you're not saying use bcrypt in this standard and make sure that your front end is talking to the back end over TLS, it's not. And then you show up to your hotel or whatever, and your back end's at your house, and you're VPNing, and it's not done right. All that stuff just ends up in the clear, and you see all these calls, and we saw AI chat applications, people trying to compromise things. So much of that cool, go ahead and vibe AI, but go validate. Don't just trust that that's the case. Same with your tunnels. Mike, they talked about it on his prezo, how Yvonne, how there's vulnerabilities in some tunnels and what they're leaking out. And then one of the big ones at Black Hat is just split tunneling. So when you set up your VPN, you can say, I want to route everything to the endpoint, or you can say, I want to route everything but these things. And most corporates will push VPN profiles, and you can't control that split tunnel. And a lot of the people who show up at Black Hat, they'll be there and I'll be talking to them, and they can't change it. What happens is just sheer luck. They get there, and the subnet that their split tunnel just matches the subnet of one of the classroom or Gen Wi-Fi or whatever that we have. But that could be a true statement for, again, any place that you're at, any Wi-Fi that you're connected to. If the split tunnel aligns, that stuff goes over that channel. And a lot of the times, the stuff that you're, in 2025, that you're VPNing to an organization's versus SSO to the internet, they're usually things that like are super sensitive, or they never bothered to go set up the encryption and do all those things because it's sitting somewhere else. And so it turns into like, holy crap. And then self-hosted, I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm debating if it's the piracy's up or privacy's up, or both. We're seeing a big rise of self-hosted, and maybe it's part of AI too. You can just slap things, but we're seeing way more self-hosted things where in one extreme situation, we had somebody who was best case a red teamer, a pen tester for a government and bank, syncing all their files back to their house, but in the clear, right? So the company had maybe all their policies, everything set right. This employee had, well, I'm going to make sure I have my own backups, and that created a problem. And one of the ones that, when a bunch of suit people walk into the NOC, it's always going to be a longer day, especially when it's multi-country, right? We also do, I do Black Hat USA, Black Hat Europe, and Black Hat Asia. So we go 3 around the year. And then there's a bunch of other things, right? These are some of my higher fidelity ones. There's a whole ton in here. There's not enough time to go through all of them, so I'm going to go really quick. But of these, just they're that same vanity tag, and they're a service that is unlikely to be used by somebody else, right? It's most likely for that work. Whether that's Glean, this is some AI, listen to all my conversations over Zoom, transcribe it, send it. They have a bunch of other stuff, but all org names, PagerDuty. I don't know if the sysadmin out in the world or previous life getting PTSD from that, but it's unlikely a customer's connecting to your PagerDuty. But I don't know, maybe you have an MSP and there's maybe a situation where it could have a little bit of overlap there. HR situations, my Workday jobs is great. It's, that's probably an employee or at least an ex-employee, right? Connecting directly to that.
Out there, things can happen, and frequently do, to packets revealing and trusting as you. A sniffer may watch with a curious stare and log all the secrets you accidentally share.
Yeah, so the way you get the way that you get a feed into some network visibility tool on an enterprise level, you're typically looking at some sort of packet broker, tap aggregate. Maybe it's glass mirrors for fiber. At home, maybe you got a span port. Maybe you got a cheap little tap that's 1 in, 2 out. Span ports on switches, that seems to be a pretty common one to do. But you have the ability to do a lot of this, and these tools, some of these are absolutely free. Wireshark is free. Just download it. Go look at your stuff. TCP dump.
Dump cap.
I don't even know dump cap.
Dump cap will get you all the packets. I Suricata as much as everyone else at Black Hat with Dumbcap.
Zeek is free. Suricata is free, right? You can do these, run these. There's no situation where you shouldn't know this. It's weird to me, not just for this, but even on when I was doing pen testing stuff, like how attackers know more about systems than the defenders do. And they just do stuff like this. They just look at the traffic. That the Typhoon ones, reading those, they were dumping PCAPs, exfilling entire PCAPs, leveraging those against the org. I mean, if you're not seeing gigs of PCAP leaving your network, you're probably not looking anyway. But what were they doing? They're just looking at network traffic. They're saying, what was this? Oh, here's all these clear text creds to the VPN service account, right? So go look. Add a span port on your switch at your house. Go take a look. There's some really cheap ones on the Amazons that will get you what you need for a lot of those things. But yeah, definitely need to go look. And then there's a lot of security products in this bucket too. This one, I'm trying to remember what OneTrust was. It was like some compliance reporting thing like that. Microsoft has a lot of these like weird variations of sites that you could host. This one is a little bit less fidelity because there are situations where you could put up this host for a customer to use versus internal. But most people who do that right just get a proper DNS and do that right for customers. They don't want to redirect them to onmicrosoft.com.access.mcas.ms type of thing. Same with, I'll show you a few more other examples of other things like that too. But ServiceNow is another one of those. Most of these are internal, but it's an application that you can go spin up all sorts of websites and do all sorts of stuff with. And so you have variations of that. Same with SharePoint. There's a lot of SharePoint. These are unique numbers, and these could be a little bit padded. Some of these are going to include like their own legit endpoints, right? But of that, it never makes it past like 10, 12, unless they have regions and a bunch of other stuff. So 28, this is at Black Hat, over 2,000 unique SharePoints. So that's a great fidelity to know where somebody works, is probably what they're accessing on internal repos at their organization.
Then you'll face a real Black Hat surprise, a grifter with mischief and greed in their eyes. They'll see your VPN, a misconfigured state, and use your own data to open a gate.
Yeah, so back to that Volt Typhoon example, that's exactly this. There was one Black Hat a few years back where people showed up on site, and after some investigation, we realized that they had command and control at that moment going to North Korea. So these examples I'm showing you, this is how I went and said, well, where do they work? How do we get in contact with them? Because it's one thing, we have these captive portals at Black Hat. It's like, hey, your device might be compromised, or you might have crypto mining on it, or something's in clear text, but we have like continue, right? Where at your organization, you're like blocking, stopping. At Black Hat, we're like, maybe you meant to have crypto mining on your machine and you don't want me blocking you. Maybe it's part of your demo downstairs. Maybe you're literally on stage presenting some malware thing right now. And so like we don't stop that. So I don't know, maybe it's part of their demo that they have 3 people who all showed up with command and control to North Korea. So we don't just want to block that, but we do want to let them know, because if they don't know, then they might want to know, right? So we went and looked at a bunch of these examples that I'm showing you, and we were able to go find them they had a booth on the floor. We're like, hey, I understand you're just a salespeople, but like, can you get me in contact with your IT or security? And here's some high level, and all of those 3 went off the network. So success, right? At the end of the day, if we're not making things more secure, we're not doing our job right in the Black Hat. Protecting our own stuff, protecting people who are there at the conference, but hopefully making it better for future shows. Some of these organizations listen, some of these applications listen, and then some just, you see it show after show after show, and we call them out. So IT support stuff, Zendesk is great. But this one, it could be a little less, because there's a lot of portals that customers get sent to that will redirect and clear on Zendesk. But when you add it with something else, increases that weight. There's 2 versions of this for the same company. It's like a Zendesk. It's Fresh Service or myfreshworks.com. It's just another IT support ticketing system. Security tools, CyberHaven is great. WebEx is, 400 of these. I'll show you the GOAT here in a minute. That's a competition of WebEx. Go ahead, Mike.
You'll want to turn back. You'll be filled with fright. They'll poke you and prod you with all their might. They'll copy your payload and send it along to a place where good packets should never belong.
Yeah, so you can take a copy of your own traffic and do something good with it, try to improve something, remediate, or somebody else with a Cactus device getting all the networks and all the channels could be taking that and doing whatever with that, right? So it's not that we are at Black Hat trying to be overly monitoring. We're trying to protect things, and then we're trying to let people know, but people are absolutely doing this, right? For wireless, you can be, I don't know, how far away can you be to actually have a reasonable capture, Mike?
Depends on the antennas, but 100 meters is a good rule of thumb.
So 100 meters is far when it comes to walls and not seeing that somebody there. Like, they don't need to be in your lobby. They can be outside, especially traveling employees, right? Everybody here connecting to Wi-Fi, the stuff, if it's leaking this stuff out, well, they might be able to know what your name is, what company you work for pretty quickly just based on what I'm showing you. Security products, SSO things. There's a lot of, that's another one. You can go look for auth pages, portal pages, SSO pages, things like that are pretty good indicators. SASE products, they're usually all vanity. Go scope in this scenario. Okta. Kanji, this is an MDM. There's a bunch of MDMs out there.
But on you will go, through the network seems foul, on you will go, through the grifter may howl. For a watcher is watching with tools of their own, a defender of data, not leaving you alone.
So whether it's yourself, you're a student learning, whether you're an organization, if I'm one of you guys in an organization here, I am absolutely going to run this against a default profile. Whatever your golden image is of your reimaged laptops, I am checking this. I'm checking that VPN connection. I'm checking that state. I'm checking whatever I think I'm okay with being out versus not knowing. Then you want to think about traveling employees, split tunneling where they land on the same subnet as the hotel Wi-Fi. Can they turn that off? Is it allowed? Because sometimes they can't and they don't have a choice. They're just routing that. So I'm absolutely validating that. If I'm an individual, I'm a student, I'm learning, just start with TCP dump or Wireshark. Wireshark's probably the easiest. You get a GUI on it. You can just hit start capture, end capture, and then just start looking at it. If you don't know, AI is pretty good at writing queries for Wireshark. Just say, tell me how I could find one of those examples I just told you, and stick it in. There is a free-form text search in Wireshark too, so you can just put that in. Go look and see what is leaking out about you and your organization. Do you have something like BigFix that's putting everything out? Or we see a lot of applications where they'll be like, it's done right, except for some weirdness with the first request is HTTP and you have your JWT, your web token is there, and that could be used to log into that application. We had more than one occasion where it was like an avatar upload. Like, everything was good with this application. Logging in was good, everything is TLS, everything is set, and then suddenly we see like a post in clear text with like basic auth, right? And so they built this app, and at some point they added a module or something where it was like, yeah, but the employee might want to change their avatar picture. And that part was not configured right, wasn't tested. Maybe it was just MVP'd up and they shipped it to prod too quick. There's no validation on it. And what we don't do at Black Hat is we see that. We don't go try to log into that portal, right? Because that's illegal. Illegal things are still illegal. But you could make a pretty good guess that that credential is likely the same credential. And in one situation, one of our own tools, it was a signage tool, did that exact thing. Everything was great. You would upload only, it was like not PNGs, but JPEGs with an E. So if you uploaded a picture of JPEGs and E, for some reason it's like, oh, that's basic auth, right? So we were updating an asset to one of the signage, and it did a post body with basic auth, and they like, hey, can we validate this would log in? And I was like, yeah, admin access to the entire thing, right? So in that situation, we had permission because it was our own tool, and that was not a small signage company. But edge case, somebody didn't code for JPEG with an E, just JPG. PNGs are fine, but with an E, yeah, why? I don't know. I couldn't tell you the thought process. Some developer maybe could. It seems like that would be, doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, go validate, use your own tools, and make sure that you're not like, the part I always find fascinating is like, we're at a security conference with a bunch of security folks. And so in my head, I'm trying not to get doom and gloom about it, but it's like, if this is what it's like at Black Hat, yeah, like, it's got to be pretty wild for the general pop, especially like some of these orgs that have very little or no say in their security team, let alone the ones that are giving them budget to go attend a training that they actually care enough to like try to like improve, or maybe just sell their wares, right? I mean, that's also a very valid reason to go to Black Hat. Salesforce, there's lots of different variations, force.com, salesforce.com, and then they have this other salesforce-scrt.com. All of these are theirs. They're all really good indicators, especially when there's multiple of them tying together. But Salesforce also lets you spin up a thing for a customer. Treat this one as a little bit lower of a weight than some of the other ones. 1Password's pretty good. This one, there's family accounts with names sometimes. So you might want to think about how if you're paying for one of those and you're vanity tagging it, if it is your family's last name, which is a lot of these, that might be a good way to know who somebody is, right? So I do think vaults are great. They're just might want to think about that. They know you're using 1Pass, right? By the way, a lot of orgs are 316, right? That's a lot of orgs. But in some of these situations, I know the family's name, right? Because they come there probably with 2 vaults. They have one for their work, one for their home. Them and their whole family's on it. That's a great practice. I'm not knocking that, but might want to make that a little more generic versus your actual last name. Another MDM, Jamf. See a bunch of this. Atlassian is pretty high on here. This is the Jira suites of products and the confluence of things. You'll see a lot of these. A lot of name vanity going off of this one. That one's a pretty good indicator. Beyond trust. More vanity.
The watcher sees you, your path and your plight. They use your data to make things secure and right. They'll see the weak spots that the grifter got through, and they'll patch it and fix it, all thanks to you.
So yeah, I mean, we absolutely leverage this to try to make things better. I would love to say that the organizations, the organizations are pretty good at remediating. Not all. Some are same year after year. The application, the service layer, what do you want to call that? It's not been a high percent. I mean, I think anybody who does bug bounty can probably say the same thing. You send them the information, the details, they say thanks. I would like to think we have a little bit of higher percent than some of the bug bounties, only because like we're not asking for money, we're not asking for anything, we're just saying, please fix this. Like it's coming from Black Hat, an email address, hey, I'd like you to remediate this. Let me give you two examples that happened at the last US show. This one that just happened, we had somebody with Splunk. Splunk's a great SIM. It's probably the preferred SIM by everybody if they have unlimited budget, right? It's a great tool. It's very powerful, but you can self-host it. You can do whatever you want with it. And we had a bank, a large bank, that we had multiple of their employees were there sending all of their telemetry from their clients directly to org Splunk. I think it was splunk.org something. It was all over HTTP, right? So is that Splunk's fault? Probably not, because they could spin up and host whatever they wanted, right? So that one we had to go in that room, and that is much more challenging than you would think, right? When it's somebody doing something illegal, going in the room and saying, who is this IP, knock it off, is way easier than saying, who's Carlos and works at this bank? Because they think they're in trouble, right? And nobody wants to admit, you're not in trouble, I swear. That's what somebody would say. Like, if it was me on the other end, I'd be like, you're really not in trouble. And so you have to like give out a little bit of information, but you don't want to like single people out and make them feel bad. But there's not a lot of other ways to do that. So you're just like, hey, I just want to have a conversation about something we're seeing that's, you might want to just look at over your network traffic, right? So that was a situation. I walked down there, made that announcement, got that guy to pull out, have a conversation with him. And, in most of the situations, they either, arguing with me or it's immediately like, that's not my job. I don't know what you're talking about. Which is fair, right? And I'm like, cool, here's my email address, have your IT team reach out to me, and then I send them the logs, and I think I've only had like 2 responses to sending them all the logs that aren't just like thanks or nothing, right? Most of the time you send it to them, they're like, okay, we'll go do something about that. Every so often there'll be somebody who wants to fight something, but that wasn't me, that wasn't this thing. But most of the time they just say thanks. So that was one situation where the org had a thing, we told them, we got right to their IT team. Hopefully that got solved pretty quick for that bank. And then there was another one that is, this one we haven't publicly said, so I'm trying to like mentally work around this. But they have an endpoint that sits on the device. They have name.cloud collecting that. And in that situation, I see no reason that should ever be over HTTP. They control both ends. There is no self-hosting. They are sending all the telemetry to themselves over HTTP. They probably have an HTTPS. Some reason that one's not, but you shouldn't even freaking allow that, right? Eldon always talks about that initial first request over HTTP that could have your JWT, which then could be used for whatever, valid. So probably don't even have that for that initial redirect. It should just be like a clear call or nothing. But in this situation, send them disclosure, and I'm hoping the next show I don't see it again, because it's a new product and people are using it. And think OS query. Anybody know what OS query is? It's just like, depending on what you turn on, all the logs from all your device. So it could be like this, or it could be like this. Oh, that's another really good indicator when you're looking at traffic. Look for osquery.org. People put collectors just called the name of the thing. That's a pretty good indicator of what it is. Okay, now we're to the goats, right? There's 2 goats in the world. This is the fastest way that we found for that one from North Korea. Zoom is one of the goats. So org.zoom.us. Really good. Not 100%, because you could join a sales call to somebody else's Zoom. There's situations where that's not the case. But when you tie that with the other goat, high fidelity, right? Slack and Zoom buckled together, wonderful outcome. Slack, again, could not be the org. There's a lot of community Slacks. There'll be trainers that will have their own Slack room that their students join, and that they don't necessarily work for that org. But when you combine usually Zoom and Slack by themselves and then start pulling in the other weights of those. So start with VPN. DNS is your friend. Go through the DNS bits if you need to know who the person is. Then move over to Slack and Zoom, and like 2,205 unique. So take out all their service stuff, like egregiously, that's 50. So, I mean, there's 1,900 unique Zooms or Slacks in this situation. Zoom was 800 at Black Hat. And that's just, Black Hat, and that's only the people who are joined to the network. That's not counting all the other people who are there at the conference who are on hotel Wi-Fi or are on something else.
So you'll get mixed up, as you already know, with decoys and honeypots wherever you go. The watchers are learning from the packets like you to stop all the grifters and see what they'll do.
Yeah, honeypots are big in the world. Deception hosts, things where a vulnerability comes out and immediately it'll turn into trying to replicate that in some system where people can compromise, validate what they do, create signatures, detections, behavioral heuristics, anomalies. We're doing this all the time at Black Hat. We have people there who are just working on straight signatures. We have people who are doing a bunch of ML things in the background. To the point of what Mike was saying, we'll do things like this compromise is happening right now. But there's 20 people doing that same compromise. And they're all going to the same 3 destinations. And then we took that further and said, of all of that, what room is it in? We feed AI the curriculum of that room, and we say, here's the detection, here's the place that they're going, here's how many in that location are doing it. Does this align with the curriculum of that class? And if all those things are true, we auto-close those as Black Hat positive, because there is a lot of alerts at Black Hat. A lot of alerts. And we don't got time for that. I need to know what the real alerts are, the ones I need human eyes on to escalate and do something about, right? So we're using that, we're validating that, we're creating signatures, we're using all the things, right? If you're just trying to plug AI to solve all things, you're gonna have a bad time. There's absolutely a place for a standard signature. Some of those are glorious and amazing. And then search-based alerts are also amazing. If you got a SIM and you can narrow your query to something that's always impactful, that is a great thing to turn into an alert. Do that. Then you get into the harder stuff and you need people like Nacho who know math to make ML models and quadratic equations, and you get over my head, and then you apply AI to make your life easier and simpler. So this is where so Black Hat USA, I did a MCP server that would let you go directly from Slack. Slack has a new AI that instead of just doing hard-coded, you can just say like threat hunt an IP address or whatever, and it would go from Slack to an MCP server, to an LLM, to the SIM, and return data, right? And I started building out this phase because it's a question I immediately asked, like, we'll find something interesting, and what do we do about this? And the first question I ask every time is like, well, what do we know about this person? Right? And that's literally this entire prezzo. What do we know about this person? And so I started building the groundwork to answer that question. I didn't get far enough done. I actually ended up in the ER in Vegas. It was a whole nother nonsense. But I was behind on where I wanted to be, but this is where I'm trying to head. And essentially it is identify employers. There's a whole section above this about identifying names if we can after this section. And then I don't think I have the screenshot, but I do. I have weights. So I have weights in here, but VPN is the go-to. Primary corporate services, frequency, the more that you see the same thing going to, here, I'll show you an example. This is an example of a org, right? This org has WebEx, they have Freshservice, they have ZPath, they have SharePoint, they have Okta, they have Kanji, and that's it. Well, the chance of them working in that org, extremely high. The chance that any one of us could get access to all of those vanity things for that org, not likely. Then they also have a VPN that matches. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure I know what org they work for, and in some of these situations, I know their name, or I know enough of the name where I can go and make a request to the registration to see who the exact person is, or get their email address directly so I can let them know, hey, maybe you got C2 to Korea, North Korea, and you don't know about it. So there's some gotchas on services. There's a lot of these I made a really good thing, and it's like, well, sometimes they have .io instead of .com. Sometimes they have .us Zoom, right? Sometimes they have .cloud, that endpoint telemetry thing, right? If you went and searched the org for that service, it would have been, for the application would have been fine, but if you did that application name .cloud, all their stuff, right? .eu, they have different regions. So it's like, oh, well, this one's, because they have some deal in the UK, it has to be hosted there. They'll have .uk, .eu, .apac, whatever, -EMEA, right? Things like that, different regions. And then there's just a wildcard of .other. If your SIM lets you do wildcard searches where you can just put in the name, sometimes that's useful. You're gonna get some collisions on other stuff, right? If you put in the word force, you're probably gonna get like GeForce and a bunch of other things, but it'll help you to see if you're missing anything blatant. Sort that by top count, see what those are, flip it by rare. I always like to see the very bottom of each one of those. What's that one unique thing that's sticking out? Could be interesting. All right, so what to do? All right, you're like, cool. You have a super unique case here at Black Hat where you're trying to figure out an org. I work at an org. I already know what org they work for. That's not as useful. But you might care about what your employees are doing going other places. You might care about the services you're leaking. You might care if things are in the clear. So VPN, right? This is your friend, but validate that VPN. Check that VPN. You might have a misconfiguration. You might have split tunneling. You might have something there that is making it not nearly as useful as you think it is. Maybe you're totally fine if somebody goes to Black Hat and they're going to vpn.org.com, and that's all that we see. That could be totally acceptable, right? no problem. But if I see a vulnerability or some issue with that VPN, I now know who to go contact. But if you're using like Tailscale is a great example, I don't see that. There's a lot of just endpoints of Tailscale, but it's not telling me the org they work for. And there's different services and things like that. Split tunneling, this is one of the highest weights for what I'm starting to build that out. If you're doing certificates, all those services, if you're using TLS 1.3, and there's a bunch of other caveats to that for the nerdy folks of Alice and Bob. But there's websites out there. Cloudflare has one that you can go and check and see what you're leaking out of each step. Just know if you tune that up to level 9,000, you will break stuff on sites. I personally keep one Firefox on my phone, which is really at the back end is, that was your conversation. Underneath on iOS is really just using Safari, but I have that one turned up to level 9,000. Then I have Safari sitting there when I need to connect to Delta Wi-Fi because it won't work. It will not work if you have it turned up. It's just like, no. It'll just spin. You think something's broke. It's not broke. Everybody else is on the internet. You're not on the internet. It's because you've turned up all your certificates, all your browser settings. So there's a place for that if you want to stop tracking and a bunch of other stuff, but there are services that you're going to have a hard time with. DNS, DOH. There was a DNS battle, and DOH seemed to win this battle, so go with DOH. But there are ways that orgs can ban steer that. You can Apple's private relay. You can force that to not be used versus being used, but your phone will pop up with a thing. So pay attention to things like that. But yeah, I mean, all those DNS ones, that VPN, if they're using DOH for that, probably wouldn't see that, right? But at the end of the day, go verify. If you take nothing away from this other than go verify, that's it. Just go check. Go. If you don't know what Wireshark is, go spin up Wireshark. Just spin it up, start a capture. You're going to spend 2 hours just trying to figure out what you're looking at, but it's super interesting. Okay, so what's next? Other things that I started looking into, UPnP is super interesting. There's a lot of compelling things in there that leak out stuff about organizations. That's also things like AirPlay and Bonjour and companion castings. There's a lot of stuff that I started looking at that. NTP has a lot of things that sometimes are very org specific. SMB, I don't know why that's in there. And then, yeah, I started seeing a bunch of WSUS stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I know what org they work for. So I'm trying to take that, apply it to the AI MCP, what company they work for, do the percent of math, and at the end of the day, I can just say, here's the IP address. What percent chance they work at Corelight? That was my MVP. Actually, I was looking at Eldon stuff. He didn't know this. And I got a 96% chance he works at Corelight. It's like, he goes there, he goes there, he goes there, he goes there. 96%. Corelight is actually one of the really hard ones to do because all the logs have the word Corelight in it for sensor names and stuff. So so much exclusions. It's so much easier to look at an org who's not part of the NOC. Okay, I don't think we have a ton of time for questions. Actually, questions, the one or two if there are any, and then I'll have a final thought. Perfect. Mike?
And you will succeed? Well, that's tricky to say. Your data's been copied and sent on its way. Your server is waiting, a victory grand, but you've left your prints all over the land. If you think you're encrypted or tunneled away, go and check to be sure before you're on your way.
Thank you.